Hey everyone, we are your legislative counselors for the Sacramento Leadership Experience. I'm Counselor Autry. Along with me we have Counselor Ford, Counselor Van Noy, and Counselor Vasquez. During this video we will be providing you information that will allow your SLE experience to be a success. Let's get started. First, we're going to discuss the idea of socioeconomics and demographics and how these play a role while working with our constituents. Constituents being those individuals that make up the district in which one represents. Now, it's important to understand that socioeconomics determines if somebody will vote, not necessarily how they will vote. Now, this breaks down into three separate areas: occupation, education, and income. This being said, more often than not, one's education determines one's occupation, and one's occupation determines one's income. And on average, those with a higher education and higher income are more likely to vote, while those with a lower education and less income are less likely to vote. Now we have Counselor Vasquez with a little bit about demographics.
Demographics is the statistical data of a population based on a variety of variables such as age, income, and education. It's important to realize that demographics deal in the world of probabilities, and there are no absolutes. There will always be exceptions when it comes to demographics. With that in mind, today we will look at 4 areas of demographics, those being age, gender, geography, and race. The age of an individual is a predictor if they will even vote in a current election. For example, those individuals that are 55 years and older make up the largest voting group, even though they constitute only 30% of the overall population. On the other hand, we have people between the ages of 18 and 34 who only make up 21% of the overall voting population, even though they constitute 33% of the overall population of California. Another demographic we look at is gender. We can see voting trends based on what gender people are. For example, Democrats are made up of more women than men. Republicans are even split between women and men, and people that vote independent are dominantly men over women. The third demographic is geography. Depending on where you live in California, it may depend on how you are more likely to vote. We see large concentration of Democratic voters in areas such as the San Francisco Bay Area and Los Angeles County, whereas Republican voters can be found in rural Northern California and the San Joaquin Valley. Finally, a person's race can play a role in how they vote. In the Democratic Party, we see a large variety of races represented, whereas in the Republican Party, 81% of voters are white. So now that we covered demographics, let's check in with Counselor Ford about the 3 branches of government.
Welcome to the Capitol City Plaza, where we'll spend our week at SLE. Now that we are here at the Capitol, let's dive deeper into those 3 branches of government. Our federal and state governments are comprised of 3 separate branches: the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. These 3 branches are kept in check through a system of balances that ensure that no one branch can become more powerful than the other. Now that we understand that we have those 3 branches of government, let's dive deeper into what each of those branches actually do. Our legislative branch is responsible for writing laws, overriding a veto, controls funds for the armed forces, declares war, and brings charges against the president if he or she commits a crime. Moving on to our executive branch. This branch is responsible for enforcing laws, vetoing bills, is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, appoints judges, and makes treaties with foreign governments. Lastly, our judicial branch is responsible for interpreting those laws created by the legislative and executive branches. Now that we've looked at the individual purposes of the branches of government, we'll dive deeper into what offices comprise each of these branches. As we're doing this, we're going to be comparing the state and the federal government, as they look very similar, but they do have some major differences. We'll start off with the legislative branch at the federal level. With the legislative branch at the federal level, we have our Senate and our House of Representatives. Our Senate is comprised of 100 senators, whereas our House of Representatives is comprised of over 435 representatives. Both of these houses together comprise what we know as Congress. At the state level, however, we have the Senate and the Assembly. Our Senate is comprised of over 40 senators, and our Assembly is comprised of 80 Assembly members. Again, the purpose of the legislative branch at both levels is to make laws. Moving down to our executive branch, at the federal level, we have the President, Vice President, Attorney General, and other offices in the President's cabinet. Moving down to the state level, we see that we have the governor, lieutenant governor, cabinet, and so on. The executive branch main purpose is to enforce laws. Lastly, our judicial branch at the federal level is comprised of 13 court circuits of appeals, one Supreme Court. The Supreme Court's main duty and ultimate goal is to be the final interpreter of those laws that are created. Moving down to our state level, we have 53 justice courts, 90 municipal courts, 58 superior courts, 18 courts of appeals, and 1 state Supreme Court. The overall purpose of our judicial branch is to interpret those laws. Now that we have an understanding of our 3 branches of government, we'll take a look at some of our key players with Legislative Counselor Van Noy.
As senators and assembly members serving this week, you will play an important role in the process of legislation. As we stand outside the Capitol steps, let's look inside and meet some of those key players that we might see throughout the week. In the legislative branch, we have the Senate, and in the Senate, we have the President Pro Temp, who is Senator Kevin DeLeon. He's the actual leader of the Senate and responsible for overall administration. Underneath him, we have the Majority Leader, Bill Monning, and the Minority Leader, Senator Jean Fuller. They are chosen by their respective parties to manage political strategy. Let's move into the Assembly with the Speaker of the Assembly, who is Assemblymember Anthony Rendon. He's the presiding officer of the Assembly, who serves as the ex officio on all House and joint legislative committees. The Majority Floor Leader is Assemblymember Ian Calderon, and the Minority Floor Leader is Assemblymember Chad Mays, who are also chosen by their respective parties to manage political strategy. In the executive branch, we have Governor Jerry Brown, who may serve 2 terms that are up to 4 years each. Lieutenant Governor is Gavin Newsom, who takes on the role of Chief Executive Officer when the governor is either out of state or unable to fulfill his duties. Next, we have the State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tom Torlakson, who is the Chief Education Officer. After him, we have Secretary of Food and Agriculture, Ms. Karen Ross. And finally, in the California Supreme Court, we have the Chief Justice, Tani Cantel-Sakoyi. Just as you will be serving as key players in the process of legislation throughout SLE, those individuals are major key players in Sacramento government. Over these next few weeks, make sure to be researching your bills and looking at the different constituents that you represent in your districts, just as we are preparing for you. See you in a few weeks.